Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to Indicio Identity Community Meetup. This month, we are very, very excited to have Dev and Alexis from GlobaliD, and they are going to demonstrate Aries mobile agent and Custodial Aries Agency API. And we will have a welcome remark from Sam Kern. And here you go, Sam. Mic is yours.
Thanks, Maya. We're really excited today to have GlobaliD, not just one, but two folks from GlobaliD here to talk about what they've been doing, which we're pretty excited about. There's a lot brewing in the mobile space and a lot of work going on, and we're grateful for them being willing to come and share what they've got. And if you're looking for something entertaining to do, go get the GlobaliD app from a mobile app store, and you can download that. It is live. I would like to encourage you as well that there's a lot of interesting things that I think we're going to talk about today. Be prepared with questions. We will have time for questions and conversation. We would love to hear thoughts or questions or things related to any of the topics we covered today. So looking forward to not only the demo and the stuff that they'll share with us, but the discussion afterwards. And with that, I'd like to chuck it over. Which of you will be starting today?
I'll start.
Also, just before we go ahead and get started, I know the third point says API, but a little bit of an audible, which we would discuss. We're going to be presenting about a notion called group-backed credentials, which we'll get to in the presentation, but just noting that.
I need permissions to share screen.
Yep.
Or someone needs to stop sharing so I can share. Whoever, Maya.
I think that's you, Maya.
Oops.
They like to hide the stop share button sometimes.
Hold on a moment.
Cool. So I just want to get started with talking a little bit about what GlobaliD is and what we've been working on. So GlobaliD is not a new company. We've been around for like 4 or 5 years now. And it started as an identity platform. But quickly, the people at the head of the company realized that it's not enough to offer just identity services. You have to offer people the ability to do things with their identity. Right? So it's not enough to have a trusted identity, but how do you actually use it? And how is it useful for the everyday individual? Because the everyday individual will only use trusted identity if it's also convenient for them. So GlobaliD today, you can go download the app, encompasses a number of services. We're not just Aries or Indicio product. We are a end-to-end, a trust platform. We have end-to-end encrypted messaging. We have a feature set for groups, so you can actually organize communities within GlobaliD. We have a currency wallet that you can hold both fiat and cryptocurrencies in through our partnership with Uphold. And now what we'll be talking about today is our new identity wallet. And identity wallet is where we'll be holding these kinds of credentials that we've been working on. Previously, we had offered the service using a proprietary technology, but within the past year or so, we have switched over to using Aries and Hyperledger Indy, specifically on Indicio, to offer credentials that people can use wherever they want, rather than just within our own ecosystem. So at a very high level, GlobaliD isn't just one service, it's a number of services. And if you want to try out any of these services, and you can go ahead and download the app. We have a web wallet or a web client as well, so you can interact with it on the web. Yeah. So Alexis, if you want to take over from there.
Yeah. So as Dev said, we are essentially a suite of products. And to give a little bit of context, Dev and I were brought on to kind of bring in this concept of the Aries protocols and how we can leverage them within our product. So obviously to do that, however, we needed an Aries mobile wallet. So we integrated some native iOS and Android wallets into our app. And these wallets now have full holder functionality. So you can accept and manage your connections. You can receive credentials from connections, accept connectionless credentials. We integrated the connectionless protocols. You can manage your credentials. You can receive proof requests from connections, and you can also receive connectionless proof requests. We are interoperable. We've been testing with both Occupy and Trinsic Studio in order to make sure that these protocols can be communicated between different agents. And one caveat that we will put in for you guys that might be downloading the app and want to follow along, it is only right now operable with the Indicio mainnet. So this is supposed to be a production app. And so if you want to use it for holding credentials, that is the one thing. It will only be able to hold Indicio mainnet credentials. It's an opt-in feature. The reason for it being opt-in right now is because it's not currently integrated with the rest of our ecosystem, but we're slowly migrating into a fully integrated feature of the GlobaliD ecosystem. So I'm going to show you a quick video demo on how to opt into it and it working along with Trinsic Studio, just as a quick little thing. So Dev, if you want to stop sharing your screen. All right. So if you download your GlobaliD app, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen right now. Yeah, so if you download your GlobaliD app, you would go to the settings and go to the verifiable credential hub down here. And you just click continue. You'll be prompted for a PIN, which is blocked out here. And this sets up your Aries wallet. This, once it becomes an integrated part of the ecosystem, will be automatically done when you sign up and download the app. But for now, it's only for people that actually want to interact with Aries credentials. And then you have your little wallet here for you to manage connections and credentials. So I'm going to skip a little bit ahead of here, go into Trinsic Studio and doing a very relevant demonstration of credentials using COVID. Kaiser Permanente creates an organization and United Airlines creates an organization. So we created a credential, first name, last name, date of birth, vaccine, and date. So we create that credential template. And here we're going to go ahead and connect with our GlobaliD. So we use the QR scanner that's already integrated into the app. And we're going to connect with Kaiser Permanente. And we create that connection. Easy peasy. And now we can view the connections here, and there I am. So now we're going to offer the COVID vaccine credential, again, just a relevant use case in this day and age. And we're going to offer that. Get your credential offer, and you have your Kaiser Permanente credential in the GlobaliD app. Then it just gets issued. So there we go. Now we're going to go to United, create a proof request template, asking for the exact same attributes. And we are going to connect with United. And then we're going to request that. You're going to see it on the GlobaliD app. You receive proof request. And then you'll see what a proof request looks on the app. You get to review. Currently, we have it such that you can disclose all of it or none of it. We will eventually have it such that you can do selective disclosure. But this is just a quick thing where you can either show that you actually have the credential or disclose the actual information itself. We will choose to actually disclose it in this instance. And we send the information over to United, who will now let us into the plane because we have a vaccine card. And we view those details, and there they are. So yeah, that is how it looks currently. It's going to be continually evolving, but wanted to share that with the community for anybody who wants to have an Indicio mainnet wallet, there is one available with us. And in the next couple of slides, we're going to be presenting kind of what the whole ecosystem of verifiable credentials will look like within GlobaliD. So I'll give it back to Dev now.
I'm muted. So along with the Aries mobile wallet, there are a couple of other services that we're working on, kind of combining into a larger ecosystem. One of the big things that we want to build architecturally is something called the Custodial Aries Agency. So we're working on building cloud-hosted wallets that service a number of needs. Firstly, for web client users, so people that want to interact with the Aries agents, but they don't have a mobile app. But also for people like issuers. So issuers that want to automatically issue credentials based on some criteria through API access, or what we'll get into later, groups that want to issue credentials as a collective. So we're able to spin these up and down using the .NET agents, but the cool part about these is that they're hosted within security enclaves. And what this allows us to do is this means that when the data is being processed, for example, if you send in PII for a credential to be issued within our system, not only is the data that is being transferred encrypted during the transfer, but it's encrypted during computation as well. And one of the things that we can do with security enclaves is code attestation. Code attestation means that at the time that the security enclave is spun up in Azure, it creates a hash of all of the code that is currently running on the machine. And that attestation is published onto the internet. Along with that, we publish the open source code that we're running on the machine itself, so anyone can compute the hash of that. And then they can compare if the attested code is the same as the open source code. If it's not, then you know that we're acting maliciously and we have code in our service that we are hiding from you. But if the hash matches, then you know exactly what code is running on the machine, while at the same time, no one can actually look inside the machine to see what that PII that's being transferred in is. And the code gets executed and the credential is published. So even though we're running these machines and running these agents in the cloud, GlobaliD won't be able to see what's actually happening on the machine itself. As I mentioned, we're using these for a variety of purposes, one of which is our web client users, so users without mobile apps. For them, we actually queue up all of these messages on the mediator side, which means that until they actually log on, no message is being decrypted. So even though we have the messages waiting for them, they just get a notification saying, hey, you have messages waiting. They log on. At that point, we start decrypting them. For group-backed credentials and the issuer-based credentials and all of these things, those we decrypt automatically, so we can process those requests automatically, such as issuing a credential or approving a trust ping or whatever you have there. Another really cool thing is, because the architecture that we're building this on is very similar to the native mobile clients that we built, we can actually do one-way migration. So whenever the web client user is ready to get a mobile app, they can transfer their wallet as is with all their credentials from the cloud agent to the mobile app. This is because the mediator is the same, so all their connections don't need to be updated, and they can migrate and have a much more secure environment on the mobile app if they so wish. So that's one thing that we're working on. And then finally, I want to talk about group-backed credentials. So one of the big problems in the credentialing space is that there are three kind of entities. There are issuers of credentials, verifiers of credentials, and holders of credentials. But the question always comes, who's going to issue credentials if no one is accepting them? And who's going to accept credentials if no one is issuing them? And this kind of chicken and egg problem has been the topic of discussion at quite a few IIWs. And one way to solve that is, just trying to make this process easier and easier. We took a look at some of the other services that we offer, and we stated, well, what if instead of focusing on app-based credentials, which is to say, instead of focusing on these credentials that can be done like by Onfido or Verif that are your passport or whatever else. We actually reduce credentials down to the community scope, and we let communities issue credentials to each other and use them for membership-based screening. And I'll give some examples on how this would work. A great example is if you have, for example, an official fan club for your favorite sports team, and you actually have employees for that sports team in that official fan club. They could get a credential based on their employment, that they are an official member, and they can actually display that as a profile badge. And you can actually do this role-based membership screening using credentials, and they can take that role, that reputation, that status, that proof of membership from one group into another. So you could have a collections of groups. For example, I'm a part of a number of hackathon groups. These are groups where developers hang out, etc. And bouncing from one hackathon group where I have a lot of reputation, I can actually take that into a sister group and say, look, I'm actually a mentor in one group and this is my reputation, and prove that as a credential. And turn these basically into a community level service. And one of the great parts about this type of credentialing is that this doesn't require any code, right? So it doesn't require any kind of API access or anything like that. Simply, a user can go within a GlobaliD group, click issue credential, fill out the credential schema, and then issue it to any member or any individual that's not even a member. That they just have to be a GlobaliD user. And they can do that kind of credentialing to any GlobaliD user without building an app, without doing some OAuth tokens or anything like that. Another thing they can do is membership screening. For example, I want to have a support group for my service that I offer, but I only want US residents to be able to join that support group because I don't want any spammers. Well, one of the things I can do is to join my group, which is my community where you can ask questions for other community members. You might need to provide some credentials, such as that you are a US resident, or that you actually have a receipt of purchase of the service that I offer, that you are a valid member of this community. So to join the group, I can gatekeep in that way. I can also, through this mechanism, offer credentials as tickets. So if there are things that I am providing for people to come to, like if I have a group and I want to set up an event, like a music festival, I can actually credential tickets to individual users. And we can do that because we also have a wallet, our currency wallet built into GlobaliD. So one of the core features we're building out is the integration of all of these services. So someone might be able to set up an event, start charging money for it, and then when someone pays, actually get a credential as a ticket, which can then be consumed and used as they see fit. So there are a number of different use cases that we want to empower, and we want to make this as easy as possible. So group back credentials really solve that problem of, who are the people issuing tickets, or who are the people issuing credentials, and who are the people verifying credentials. Because if we lower this down to the community level, then there's not that setup process of, oh, I need to create a website, or oh, I need to create some API access, or oh, I need to create a whole application. We actually narrow it down and get it down to the roles inside of a community. And then let's see if you want to cover the last slide.
Yeah, so as we've kind of been laying it out through here, is we're trying to build a whole ecosystem around credentials, right? And really bake it into everything that GlobaliD has to offer. So the different types of credentials, or the sources thereof of these credentials, are going to be mainly through these four. We're gonna have what's called a credential app store. So within our identity wallet, which we're building out right now, you're gonna be able to go and browse a list of approved issuers that can send you a trusted verifiable credential. So for example, Onfido for a government ID, or Mandrill for email, etc. But we're gonna have a dedicated credential app store where you can go and send information into a verifier to then give you a credential that is going to be much more trustable than, if you just got it from any other source. Group back credentials, which Dev just went into a great explanation of, which can have any number of use cases, right? Whatever group you're a part of, whether it's an institution or just a social club, there's just a whole lot of different uses that group-backed credentials can have. And it's really up to the community themselves to kind of build that up, which is something that we really look forward to. Self-declared credentials is also something that we're going to be offering. So a place where you can go in and, for example, let's say you just want to have all the different things that you normally hold in your wallet for any reason, whether it is because you want to just remember something, or you just want to have for example, your insurance card in the same place that you have all your other, identity-based things, then you can make one for yourself and store it in your identity wallet. And then we're going to have the notion of peer-based vouching. So in GlobaliD, the big thing is having a community around, the people that you're messaging, the people you're in groups with, and you're going to have your friends or the people that you're in groups with vouch for you, and that will become in the form of a credential that you can then, attest to other people as, here, look, this is how many vouchers I have all of a sudden a reputation that I can verify for. So this is the larger ecosystem and all the sources of credentials, and maybe even more to come, that will exist within GlobaliD, and all empowered by verifiable credentials. And I think that's what we have.
Yeah. Stop sharing. One other thing is, if you have any questions about any of this that we don't cover during the next couple minutes, I'm going to put Alexis and my email in the chat.
That's great. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. And actually, I will also just already address for anybody who's not following the chat, we were asked what are the links to the demo. We use Trinsic Studio, so studio.trinsic.id. But I did already write it out. We're using the Indicio mainnet because of this overall ecosystem that we're trying to build. So we have to stay on one network for now. We are building a developer mode, which will, happily announce through Indicio, because we're going to be using Indicio testnet for that developer mode, specifically for anybody who wants to use just the Aries wallet piece, right? Because our goal here is a broader interaction with the ecosystem as a whole, along with just Aries protocols. So yeah, opening it up to any questions.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks, now's the time to ask all those questions you've been saving up. I did warn you.
Hi, I have one, if I may.
Please.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Xavier. I work at Validated ID, and I was willing to ask something, well, not that tech related, but more relating on the business side. Mm-hmm. If you're open to discuss about your business model, I played a little bit with your app already, which I find awesome, by the way. And yeah, I was wondering, you're going B2C or so, or
yeah,
more B2B, or what's?
So we're focusing on consumers. So we're not focusing on B2B right now. So there are kind of two ways to approach credentialing, or kind of tackle the SSI space. We call it the implementation approach, and then the SDK approach. So there is already a really good company out there that does like SDK-based API access for developers, Trinsic. So we went on the implementation approach. One of the things we want to focus on is making things as easy as possible for the everyday person to use credentials through the app, issue them, and then accept them without having to worry about writing code or worry about any of that. So our current focus is making credentials part of the everyday interactions that you have on GlobaliD for the end user. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. But so are you thinking about a premium, or, I mean, who's paying?
Yeah,
I mean,
so we don't want to charge money on the credentials themselves. Okay. Credentials are the oil that greases all the wheels, right? Where we make money are things that we're going to build on top of credentials. So for example, one of the things we have is a currency wallet, and we take a percentage of that when you spend money and so on. Another thing that we are working on right now is we just announced an XRP card for our groups initiative. And so if you have a GlobaliD group, you can actually get a community card that will give you some percentage back, and that fee is split between the group owners and GlobaliD. And so we're working on different ways to monetize, but we don't want to monetize credentials. We want to make credentials part of the everyday transactions, and the services that we build on top of credentials, things like the community-based cards, maybe trust frameworks, or the more elusive stuff. We want to charge for that stuff.
And
so thanks
if
for
I
sharing.
can, yeah, if I want to jump in real quick to anybody who hasn't already, just like Xavier did, downloading the app will really give you an idea of what we mean of this kind of like broader ecosystem that we're trying to join together through credentials, right? Because if you download the app, then you'll see what we're trying to offer, right? What we realize at GlobaliD is that your identity, your online identity, is linked to pretty much all your online interactions. And so that's our approach of the app and everything that we're offering through groups, messaging, the money wallet, and now the identity wallet, right? It's all intercorrelated, and we really want to use credentials to, it's that last piece of the puzzle to connect them all together. So if you download the app and you play around with what we have, you'll kind of get an idea of what we mean with this ecosystem that's all going to be conjoined. Noah, I see, has a raised hand.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm based in Bahrain, and I'm interested in an SSI field. So if I know correctly, that Aries is all about interoperability between different SSI blockchains. And when you say you're using an Aries mobile agent, do you support other indie networks or even other networks to like operate on your credentials?
Currently, we do not, but that is something that we have considered. So we are working on adding Indicio mainnet and Indicio testnet. So Indicio mainnet is live now. We're adding an Indicio testnet. One of the things we want to see is if there is support for other networks and what people are going to be credentialing on. The reason we are a little hesitant about supporting a bunch of different networks is because that will create confusion for the end user on where my credential can be used and where it can't. So while Aries has interoperability, when there is someone issuing a credential, they have to pick a ledger that they're anchoring on. And when they are checking for a credential, they have to like know which ledger to check against. And by introducing multiple networks, one of the complexities that increases is you have to kind of educate both the users and the issuers about, oh, if you issue on this ledger, it can only be approved, like asked for on this ledger, and so on. So that's one of the things we're trying to simplify.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
And also just kind of as a to the community kind of thing, because unfortunately one of the things is that there is no protocol level way of just being, oh, this is from this ledger, right? If it's not in the right network and it just says error, you have to kind of switch over to the network that the issuer is using. You have to know what that is beforehand. So to reduce that complexity, we're using the one network approach for now, especially because we're integrating it with so many other features within our ecosystem. But we are offering that developer, we're working on that developer mode for anybody who just wants to play around with the Aries specific piece.
So can I add some color here? When Indy was born, it didn't natively support distributed Indy networks. There's some efforts going on to define the Indy did method. And what that will do is allow for resolving not only DIDs on different networks, but actually resolving different networks through self-discovery. The short answer of that is that the type of glue that will enable all the cross-network stuff to happen, so that you can actually not have to worry about which network you're anchored to, is coming. And the work is not there yet, but the spec is narrowing down. Stephen Curran at BC Gov is heavily involved in that effort. And then as that becomes more defined, we're looking for community assistance in helping to build out those pieces of Indy node that will enable the cross ledgerness that brings that all together. So the current situation where you kind of have to know which network you're on, we are working to make go away. And when I say we, I mean the community as a whole. We're working to make that go away and to be a resolved issue, so that it's not something that we have to deal with in the future. But the current reality is that you sort of have to make that choice. And so that's how it sits today, but it will get better. That's the good news.
And we're happy to support it when it's available.
Yeah. Cool.
And if you Google around on the Indie method and things, you'll find some of that work that's going on. If anyone wants to jump in and be involved. So I have a question. Dev, you mentioned that that you want to build things on top of credentials rather than, and I'm not asking you to spill the stuff that you want to work on next, but if I could ask you to reach way farther in the future, what are some things that you would love to see done in this manner in a decade, right? Like what's sort of the moonshot of enabling these sorts of things that's out there and fun?
Not in a decade, but rather sooner. Some things that we're working on that I can maybe talk about at a very hypothetical level without making any promises that we're exploring that kind of excite me is content monetization based on credentials. And what that means is I do a lot of work in content monetization. If you want to offer a file, if you want to share a file, for example, like using Google Drive or Dropbox, currently the way to do that is through link-based sharing. If anybody has this link, they can access it. But a couple of things that we can do with credentials is we can actually offer, hey, you have this file. To access this file, if you're accessing as a student, you can pay $10. If you're accessing this as a regular person, you can pay $20. And you can do this kind of credential-based access for the files that you want to content monetize. And that's a service you can build on top of credentials and on top of the currency wallet and offer as a package service that you can't really do with other file sharing platforms. And then on top of that, with the groups feature, you can actually build communities and trust frameworks. And so you can actually have groups as publishers of this content manage that and handle that, which we're kind of really excited about. So this interaction between groups, wallets, trust frameworks, and credentials all working together to build these kinds of services, that's really exciting.
So you said words that I like to hear. You mentioned trust frameworks.
Mm-hmm. I can talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, can you? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and the things that we're exploring right now is how to make groups of groups be trust frameworks. So a couple of things that we're exploring is, can a group grant permission to another group to issue credentials? And so we're looking into how to do this kind of permissioning layer with credentials. And what that would mean is you could have hierarchy of groups. They can issue schemas and they can say, oh, if you want our stamp of approval, you have to follow certain standards. And when they issue a credential, one of the fields in the credential can be this credential was given this approval, and you can actually go and cryptographically check that approval was valid by the given group. And so groups of groups building this kind of web-based trust allows us to do trust frameworks. And actually, when you get the credential issued, check back cryptographically that it was issued by the authority of the trust framework. So the credential was issued by group A, but the trust framework was issued by the parent group within that credential. So that is stuff that we're exploring. That's stuff that we're very, very excited about. And that's directly made possible by our group system that we have.
So earlier you talked a little bit about, by the way, anyone jump in here. I do not need to monetize or to steal all the time. So please jump in. You talked a little bit before about group credentials, and it strikes me that that is the very beginning of a reputation system that can enable all sorts of stuff we don't really have on the internet, right? One of the better reputation systems that we have, at least in the coding world, is Stack Overflow. And they've got a pretty well-developed reputation system for doing things and gaining points in their system, et cetera. But it's not very portable, right? I can't take the reputation that I have there and combine it with something else or sort of allow that to be more usable outside of that particular scope. Any thoughts you have that you're willing to share on what reputation systems can do for us?
One thing that I'm kind of excited about is, so let me talk about a very practical example. one of my kind of hobbies is this kind of gaming world, is that if you're a Patreon subscriber, a lot of the Patreons that I subscribe to, they give you benefits on Discord. So they have a Discord community that they have set up. And if you are a subscriber on their Patreon tier, you get certain ranks within their Discord. And I'm bringing this up for a specific reason. Currently, those two services need to talk to each other via API. They need to enable API endpoints, and they need to know about each other. What that means is, what if I want to set up a community on Slack? Well, now I need to wait for Patreon to actually enable Slack support and things like that. In the credentialing world, one of the cool things that I'm really excited about is breaking away from this API collaboration. And whether you have Patreon or Stack Overflow, issuing their membership or statuses or whatever else as a credential, and then anyone could integrate those. And one way that we're integrating those is, like in GlobaliD, we're using profile badges. So right next to your name, you can have badges that you can screen. So you can say, I have this credential, I would like this badge. And you can do that within communities. And you can think of it as a gravatar. So anywhere on the internet that you have like a profile, one of the things they could enable is if you can screen against credentials that you have, and you can build your profile quickly and openly. And that kind of allows you to create this portable layer of like proof of membership from different communities, different services, different wherever. Use them in any context that you want without actually having those services talk to each other via API. And that's something that I personally think is really, really exciting, because that means that I get to enjoy more of my services without having to wait on their developers to talk to each other. I do want to take a moment to answer the question that Jakob brought up in chat.
Yeah, I was just typing out that answer.
Alexis, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, good call. I'm just saying, I was just about to type it all out. So the question is, will it be open sourced, as you mentioned in one of the articles? This is in respect to the native iOS and Android frameworks that make the Aries wallet work on GlobaliD, and the answer is yes. There might be already some people on this call that might recall that we actually said this during the last IIW. And so just to paint a little bit of a picture on what was going on there, we started contributing the indie wrappers. So we actually had to build indie wrappers for iOS and Android as well in order to make the Aries frameworks work. We contributed the Android wrapper, and we're working on finalizing the work needed to contribute the iOS wrapper on indie side. Due to a number of reasons, both on our side and on Hyperledger, that took a long time, to the extent where the wrappers were now out of date and need updating. Then there was the new year came in, a lot of reprioritization in GlobaliD, and we had a lot of work on our side to get this going. But long story short, we are reprioritizing that now. Within the next month or so, we're hoping that we'll have both the indie wrappers and subsequently the Aries frameworks that require those wrappers out in the open source community. But yes, the answer is they will be open source.
And Alexi, if someone wants to access that code base right now, can they message you on Rocket Chat?
Yes, please message me on Rocket Chat. Email me on the email that Dev put on the chat, alexis@global.id. And specifically for Android, unfortunately for iOS, it's a little bit more complicated just because it's Apple. But if it's on Android, we can give you a package and an APK. You can download it, play around with it, and that kind of thing. And we can also give you access to source code. So if you want that, it's something that you really want to play around with, we can give you access. Otherwise, within the next month, we're hoping we'll be out in the Hyperledger umbrella.
Okay, no one's asking questions, so I have more. The idea of one of the things that the internet sort of developed is this: when we think of authorization, we really think of authenticate first, right? First, give me your username and password, then I'll decide what permissions you should have, and then I'll see if you can enter the system. And it strikes me that reputation allows for access control based on reputation instead of identity, which means I could prove in zero knowledge the possession of particular types of credentials, which would then prove the necessary reputation for some resource that someone wants protected, which means that there's a nice balance there between promoting good behavior but still allowing anonymity. And on the behavior thing, some background. There's a paper that I studied a long time ago that talks about the cost of cheap pseudonyms. In that if you can just instantly abandon a bad reputation that you gain in a system, then and create a new one, then there's a problem with that. You end up with lots of bad behavior and people not trying to maintain a good reputation. If we have to gain access to something by good reputation, then I don't really want to lose that because I put a lot of work into getting it and it wasn't trivial, which means that those systems that run on some sort of reputation, whether it be like in real life or online, tend to have troll type behavior. I'm trying to be political about this, right? Troll type behavior doesn't tend to be as common. And so that's kind of a neat opportunity. We've never actually really had on the internet something that is both privacy preserving, but also restricts access based on reputation. And that's a neat opportunity that we haven't had, right? So some of the problems that we're trying to solve are things that the internet has done poorly in the past, and we think we can do better. I think this is one of those things where we can do new things that the internet's never successfully pulled off before. And because of the technologies that we're leveraging, the standardization of protocols, leveraging credentials, the frameworks, the trust frameworks, and everything that you've mentioned. And so that's exciting to me. Sorry, this ended up not being a question, but this is really exciting to me because of that opportunity. I love thinking of new things we can do that we've never really been able to pull off.
Well, so to build on that and to kind of bring up something that we've been thinking about and working on is discovery of trust frameworks. So when we talk about reputation is really important, but how do I know that what you're presenting to me is reputable? For example, I could have two groups. I could have a wine lovers group, and I could have wine lovers Bay Area and wine lovers Chicago, right? And they both offer a type of credential that says you're a connoisseur. But the wine lovers Chicago group has like 5 members, and there's no real value in that credential. And the wine lovers Bay Area might have 100,000 members, and to actually get a credential from them is a significantly tougher process. But when you're presenting me the credential, it just has a wine lover's passport. It's the same schema. They're part of the same trust framework, but one community is much more reputable than the other, or is harder to gain. And so one of the things that we're trying to think about is how do we do that kind of reputation based, like how do we bundle in that meta information about the community within the credential? And how can we make that easy to discover and easy to understand? One metric is number of members within the group, but that's not by itself good enough. Like number of members in a group, you could spam the group, you could create fake members, etc. So we're trying to think of other ways in which we can show reputation of a community as part of the meta information presented when you're working with credentials.
So you've brought up those questions in the chat, so we'll get to in a sec. You brought up embedding that within the credential. One of the things that I have wondered about, and I don't have an answer to yet, is the right bundling of that in the credential layer, or could you perhaps have a credential that can simultaneously satisfy multiple trust frameworks in such that there's a little bit of a many-to-many scenario there? And I don't really know the answer there. We don't actually have as much work in practical application of trust frameworks or governance frameworks as I would like, right? Mm-hmm. This is still a very new thing, and trying to figure out and exercise things and discover what works and what doesn't very well is a difficult thing. So it's interesting, the embedding within the credential. I had mostly been thinking about something that would be independent, but then that does make the discovery hard if you receive a credential you've never seen before.
So one of the things that we've thought about is, so when you're given a credential, even if you don't embed it within the credential, one piece of information that you have is the issuer did. So you can do discovery based on the issuer did. I can do a cross-reference of the issuer did. We can have GlobaliD as an endpoint and say, okay, issuer did what's XYZ. XYZ belongs to a group, and this is the metrics about that group. So that's one of the ways that we've been thinking about doing discovery. But you know, how do we make that approachable? How do we make that something that we can present into a, you know, so when you get a credential, it does the auto lookup. It says, okay, these are the metrics of the group. So now you know that you have a credential and what reputation might it actually have. It's just we haven't had a better metric than number of members in a group that we've been able to come up with.
But what you're talking about is issuer reputation, right?
Yeah.
Is that you're going to validate or assign value to the issued credential based on the reputation of the issuer. And I like that. The ability to, you know, the ability to do that could be, in addition to reaching out to sort of a centralized place for that authority, and that could be GlobaliD, it's also might be possible for you to reach out to the actual issuer and say, hi, I would like to learn something about your reputation. And then they have the opportunity to present credentials that to, you know, as a way of satisfying that, which is a little more organic in a way, but would allow discovery of people that even exist outside of any group that you've ever known, right? So that's a really interesting idea. Okay, sorry, I'll stop talking. There's a couple questions in chat that I think are really interesting. Alexi, you're answering.
I just addressed the first one, which the question was specific reason to only host agent on a mobile device instead of the on a cloud for a web client. Short answer to that is that we are also going to offer a web client that is hosted on the cloud. With that being said, you can only have one or the other. We recommend obviously the mobile client because it's, you know, that's the more sovereign, portable, and secure. It lives on your device and only on your device. But we will be offering a cloud-hosted web client version, which you can then migrate into the mobile wallet whenever you want to do that move, which we would recommend anyway. The second question, how is the wallet operations handled when the user has a mobile and web account? Where's the wallet stored? Again, you will have one or the other. So if you have it on your mobile client, it will be all operations on client side. And if you have the web wallet version, it will be on the cloud agent side.
No. So the answer is, can you migrate back to the cloud wallet? No. It is a one-way process. We call it upgrading because we generally prefer people to have a mobile wallet rather than the web wallet. The web wallet, while you can use it and it's fully functional, we want you to maintain control of your data. The real web wallet users that we want to have are the groups and the issuers, and the everyday user. We really want to encourage you to download the wallet on your mobile device, so all of your data is on the mobile device. So we do not allow migrating back to the cloud.
One of the things the community needs to discuss and has not yet very well is how do you handle a multi-scenario? Can I have one on my desktop and on my phone, or can I have two phones and have them shared between? Those are all excellent questions, and we have not had enough conversation in the community about how to manage that. But those are conversations that we need to and hopefully will have before too long.
Yeah.
Totally.
Multi-device support.
That's a super weak sauce answer, but like that's the reality. We've got a lot of stuff to fix. We just haven't got to that one yet.
Yeah. Multi-device support is somewhere on the roadmap, but we have 1,000 things to build before we get to it.
It's on the idea map, right? It's not really a roadmap yet.
And I think it ultimately leads to that age-old question of like, how secure do you want it versus how usable do you want it, right? Is it the UX versus the actual security behind it? A mobile client will always be better than a cloud-hosted agent, you know, 1,000% of the time, because the device is on you. You know, it's like somebody stealing your keys. They have to take it from you physically.
Right. There's also important issues about portability between wallets or backup and restore, right? Everyone is like, what happens? What do I do when I drop my phone in the ocean thing? And so those things are easier to solve from a vendor specific level. They're a little harder to solve when you're trying to do it in a cross vendor compatible way. But those are communications or conversations that are happening sooner than the multi-device sync stuff. The concept of being able to back up and restore in particular is a really growing hot topic as things improve in the mobile side of the credential ecosystem.
And one that we are tackling, actually, in fact. You are able to, you know, if you lose your device, something that you'll notice actually from GlobaliD, if you have your one account and that's kind of like your end all be all. And so whenever you restore your GlobaliD account anywhere, your Aries wallet will go along with it. but then you have it in one place. It's always on one device. GlobaliD can't exist on, like if you have two phones, that's kind of like a philosophical decision that we made. If you have two phones, you have your GlobaliD account on one of them. And if you want to restore it on the other, then it'll delete the information from the other one.
Oh, that's actually something else that I would like to talk about is our restore process. We offer a number of different ways to restore your device. One of them is like trustees. One of them is, what do we call the other one? Alexis, do you remember?
Well, we have the key phrase.
Yeah. So but with the trustees, one of the things that we're trying to pioneer is basically have trusted, like instead of, so you can trust like your friends, but you can also have trusted institutions that hold parts of the keys, and then you can recover from trusted institutions. So like, for example, a bank might work as a trustee. You might have some security company as a trustee, et cetera. These trusted institutions that their job is to just hold parts of keys, and then you can recover from them. Another way is to do standard Tramier sharing, which is you designate which on your contacts list you want to have holding parts of your keys, and then the part of your keys backed up on their the section of the cloud, and so on. So you can do both trustees and then everyday your contacts as recovery. Now, I have a question, which I probably should know the answer to, but the Indy, on Hyperledger Indy for an issuer DID, does that allow for an endpoint on the DID doc, or is it just a set of keys?
This bleeds a little into, someone knows a better answer than me, please speak up. This bleeds a little into the development of the Indy DID method. They have some specific ways of doing that. On the ledger, yes, you can have both the DID, which of course relates to the keys that are present, and you can also, there's a convention, I'll call it, for recording an endpoint as an attrib. And the new Indy DID method allows for those endpoints specified as an attrib to still work in the future. So that is a thing. Cool.
Because I was thinking we could probably use that for discovery, for reputation, and then have that endpoint point to like basically for groups. One of the things we can do is just build a page, provide that as an endpoint, and then when you want to do discovery, you can pull up like a statistics page about the group. So that could probably solve that problem. Again, the only metric I have right now is just, well, I guess two metrics. One metric is number of members in the group, and then if the group has any credentials that they want to showcase. So they have collected any credentials as a group, they can showcase those. Yeah.
Maybe one more question. We have a few more minutes. Anybody else?
Questions, concerns, life tragedies, just want to air dirty laundry. We're here to listen.
All right. Thank you, Dev and Alexis, Sam. It was fun. Yeah, let's talk about next meetup. Next month, we are going to have a sneak peek for IIW. We are going to have a co-founder of IIW, Phil Winley and Karia Young, and they will give us some tips. And from Indicio, we have Ken, Sam, Lynn. They will talk about what they are thinking to talk about in the IIW. And we don't have the topic for the following months yet. So you're welcome to email me or anyone from Indicio want to hear what you're thinking. If you have any requests for the topic, yeah, please let us know. And the Mana just asked best way to stay in touch with you all at GlobaliD. Okay, all right. So, okay, great. And my email is maya@indicio.tech. If you have a question, idea, please email me anytime. And we are going to close this session. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And I look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexis and Dev.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Maya, for hosting, and Sam for leading the discussion.
Thank you.